8. The moment of truth. Effective, relevant business reasons will work for all outreach channels. In this chapter, as well as chapters 9, 10, and 11, we will incorporate them into broader messages we will use to connect with prospects by phone, in writing, and in person. Of all the sales tools available, the phone is still the most powerful. Many salespeople, especially younger ones, will try to debate this. Nobody picks up the phone anymore. Sending emails is so much more efficient. It's not like it used to be. People get irritated when I call them. I hear these statements often, usually from people who are not hitting their numbers. But I firmly believe the most successful salespeople know how to use the phone to set up face-to-face meetings with decision makers. I don't even agree with the argument that cold calling has gotten harder over the last few years. It's always been hard. It's always been the least favorite part of everyone's job. When underperforming salespeople argue it's no longer effective, it always seems as if they're actually hoping they are right, so they can finally give up on cold calling for good and focus instead on blasting out one email after another or posting and sharing articles on LinkedIn. Rejection is so much easier to take that way, right? A hang-up or a not interested over the phone is worse for the ego than no reply to an email. Your friend, the phone. Contact and conversion rates are higher with outreach over the phone. In many industries, contact rates have actually been rising over the last decade. It's hard to say exactly why prospects are answering their phones more often, but it could have something to do with the fact that many decision makers no longer have secretaries or assistants who used to shield them from sales calls. Instead, many have their office calls forwarded to their cell phones, or their cell is their only phone line. That means that they no longer have to physically be at their desks for you to reach them. It is true, though, that their phones are just not ringing as often as in the past. With most salespeople choosing the easy route of email, decision makers' email inboxes are flooded with hundreds of sales offers, while their phones stay silent. Sales champions see this as a great opportunity. Approaching a prospect by phone is actually helping you differentiate yourself from other salespeople more than ever. It is also much easier nowadays to find phone numbers of companies and decision makers online. Sources range from the company's website, usually in the About the Company or Contact Us sections, to online sales platforms like Owler, RocketReach, Winmo, or Hunter. If for some reason you're not able to find the names of potential decision makers during your prospecting research, pick up the phone, call the company, and ask. "I need your help. Who decides on?" is usually a good way to start. If you can't get anywhere through the usual departments, try the sales department. A typical salesperson will empathize with you and try to help you out with a name and potentially even extension and email address. Scripts and talking points. Your RBR constitutes the core of your phone message. If you're new to sales entirely or in a new sales role at a new company, write down the entire script, word by word. I know what you're thinking. Scripts sound rehearsed, they make you sound canned, and are usually too long. That is true to some degree. In the wrong hands, scripts can actually make your call less effective. The last thing the person on the other end of the line needs is someone interrupting their day with a message that sounds like it's read from a teleprompter. However, writing a script does force you to think through your phone message in its entirety, from beginning to end in a logically structured way. Actors also work off scripts and don't actually sound scripted. That's your goal here too. The more experienced you become in your new sales role, the less you will have to rely on entire scripts. Instead, you will focus more on talking points that outline your call. Write these talking points down so you're better prepared and to make your call sound more consistent. You want to use the most compelling statements over and over instead of constantly making up new lines on the fly. Start strong. When you outline your message, one rule stands above all others. The first 10 seconds count. Similar to a TV or radio commercial, it has to engage you right from the beginning to earn the right to your attention for the rest of the ad. You have to make an impact from the moment your prospect picks up the phone. Different studies have shown that prospects will have made up their minds after 10 seconds. 10 seconds max, that is. During those 10 seconds, you have to convey to prospects that you are an expert on what you're calling about and that you are someone worth listening to further. That's not easy, which is why your message has to be concise and engaging off the bat. As mentioned earlier, your tonality, confidence, and energy level will play a big part in creating this immediate impression as well. Effective cold call framework. Let's break down the entire phone message into 7 components, structured around the chosen RBR. The resulting cold calling framework is shown in Figure 8.1. Let's take a closer look at each of these 7 components. Greeting. Begin the call with a confident good morning or hi, followed by the prospect's first name. It seems trivial, but people everywhere in all positions, industries, and countries like hearing their names. In the United States, it has become absolutely acceptable to use someone's first name, even if you have never met the person before. That's not the case everywhere, by the way. In languages like French, Spanish, or German, salespeople have to actively decide which pronoun to use. Tu or vous in French, tu or usted in Spanish, du or sie in German, since these are signifying informal or formal ways to address a person. You don't have to worry about that when you're selling in English and in the US. There's no need to address a prospect with Mr. or Miss either, maybe with the exception of the medical field when you probably say doctor followed by the person's last name. But in general, good morning Tracy will do. Identification. Use your first and last name followed by the name of your company. You don't need to mention your title, position, or role. We'll get to that. I never understood why some salespeople are hesitant to give their name or their company's name at the beginning of a cold call. Avoiding a confident identification is an approach that almost always backfires. While you're going over the RBR, all the prospect is thinking is, who is this guy? It's just not an effective technique. People like transparency, and unless you're selling something illegal, there's absolutely no reason not to give your full name and the name of your company at the start of the call. It demonstrates that you are a professional, a business person. Thanks for taking my call. Yes, thanking the prospect for picking up the phone will take up a second or two. But trust me, it's time well spent, because at this point of the call, the prospect's defense shield is at its strongest. Do I know this person? Is this a sales call? Should I come up with an excuse and get off the phone right now? Damn, I wish I hadn't picked up. Thanking the prospect for taking the call lowers the prospect's resistance level because you're acknowledging that you're intruding on their day. Sometimes prospects will respond affirmatively at that moment of the call. Sure. Other times, they won't say anything. In both cases, you just bought additional time to build up your authority with your follow-up statement. Thanking them for taking the call is also much more effective than asking, "How are you?" I head up. I've been using the line "I head up" for many years and it has always served me well. Seeing it suggested in several courses and books on cold calling over the last few years has reinforced my belief that, as simple as these 3 words sound, they are true difference makers. They make you stand out from other salespeople by enhancing your position and elevating your authority level in the prospect's mind. Maybe I should pay attention to this person. But the phrase "I head up" does even more than that. It also increases your own self-confidence. No one wants to sound like a salesperson or, even worse, telemarketer, and stating "I head up" makes you feel like an executive who is in charge of something. The truth is, even if your business card might not convey it, we are all in charge of something. I head up event sponsorships. I head up the healthcare vertical. I head up shopper marketing partnerships. You just need to determine what makes the most sense for your role. You should also feel free to change up what you are heading up depending on which prospect you are calling. Don't use your job title here. Everyone does that. Use whatever makes you look like a true expert in whatever field you think the prospect is most interested. Give your relevant business reason. It's go time. The prospect knows who you are, where you're calling from, and what you do. Now it's time to tell your prospect why you're calling. You already did the heavy lifting here by thinking of an RBR in advance, an idea, an insight, or an in-segment success story. If you can drop the name of a referral, even better. Just proceed in a quick and concise manner. Your prospect won't be willing to sit through a 20-second RBR. Transition to what's next. Before we can ask for a face-to-face meeting, we need to explain why such a meeting will be beneficial to the prospect. Such a transitional statement builds on the RBR and paints the picture of what the prospect can expect in the actual meeting. It also reduces the stress level on the prospect side when you're transparent about your intentions. People are more comfortable when they know what to expect. I think the best place to start would be for me to show you some initial ideas. I'd love to come in and walk you through the detailed case study. Let's get together to see if we are a fit. From there, we can decide if it makes sense to have a deeper conversation. With statements like these, you're setting up the actual ask for the meeting perfectly. Ask for the face-to-face meeting. Get straight to the point and forcefully ask for the meeting. Be confident and direct. Does next Monday early afternoon work for a video call? How about we meet next Wednesday at 2 p.m.? I can stop by your office next Tuesday at 10 a.m. Give the time as specifically as possible. Don't just offer to meet next week. Then shut up. Give your prospect time to respond. It takes a moment to process all the information you just went through on the call. Most likely, the prospect will not grant your request. That's right. Even after calling fully prepared and full of energy and confidence, with a strong, prospect-focused RBR, voiced in the right tone, chances are the prospect will say no to you. Buyers are simply receiving too many messages from salespeople throughout the day. Their automatic reaction is set to no meeting. Don't take it personally. It's not you. It's a fact of sales life. Expecting the objection is already half the battle, and we will cover how to respond in Chapter 12. Still, be prepared to ask for the meeting 3 times. Remember, we look at this part of the sales process as heavy metal sales. This is the time to put the pedal to the metal and to push past resistance if needed. Fight for the meeting. Often that means using up additional RBRs to convince the prospect to invest precious face-to-face time with you. That's why you always want to have more than one RBR at your fingertips. One last tip for scheduling the meeting. Portray yourself as a business person whose time is as valuable as your prospects. Offering up meetings for the following day, or statements like, I'm very flexible time-wise, or I have the entire day open, what works best for you, are detrimental to that goal. You want prospects to believe you're working with many different accounts that need to be serviced. The length of the meeting you're requesting depends on your industry and what you're planning to cover with the prospect. I've found that asking for 45-minute discovery meetings has worked well for me over the years. If the meeting runs long for whatever reason, it's unlikely the prospect would have scheduled another meeting at 45 minutes past the hour or 15 minutes past the hour, and I can still cover everything needed. At the same time, a 30-minute meeting wouldn't allow for more detailed discussions and for agreeing on a clear follow-up assignment, which is the goal of the first meeting. Case study. Cold call script for Rebecca Gyms. Based on the RBRs we developed for Rebecca Gyms in the previous chapter, one way to approach CMO Tracy Ranner is to use our in-segment success story RBR in our cold call. Here's the message broken down into its 7 components. Step 1, greeting. Good morning, Tracy. Step 2, identification. This is Dave Gahan with NYC Media in New York. Step 3, thanks for taking my call. Step 4, I head up the health and fitness vertical here. Step 5, RBR. Tracy, we recently helped Weiss Studio launch 10 new locations in New York, and as a result, they surpassed their membership goals by 43%. Step 6, transition. I'd love to schedule a meeting to share with you what exactly worked for them and go over some potential learnings for your upcoming launch in New York. From there, we can decide if it makes sense to have a deeper conversation. Step 7, ask. Since you're based in San Diego, does next Monday early afternoon work for a 45-minute video call, maybe 2 p.m.? The cold call script would therefore look like this. Good morning, Tracy. This is Dave Gahan with NYC Media in New York. Thanks for taking my call. I head up the health and fitness vertical here. Tracy, we recently helped Weiss Studio launch 10 new locations in New York, and as a result, they surpassed their membership goals by 43%. I'd love to schedule a meeting to share with you what exactly worked for them and go over some potential learnings for your upcoming launch in New York. From there, we can decide if it makes sense to have a deeper conversation. Since you're based in San Diego, does next Monday early afternoon work for a 45-minute video call, maybe 2 p.m.? Here is another cold call script for Rebecca Gyms, this time using the idea RBR you developed. Good morning, Tracy. This is Dave Gahan at NYC Media in New York. Thanks for taking my call. I head up the health and fitness vertical here and heard about your plans to launch Rebecca Gyms in New York. Tracy, imagine if we create a movement of New York women, led by our female radio personalities and bloggers that hold each other accountable to work out on a regular basis. I really think that would make an impact quickly and drive new memberships. I wanted to schedule some time and flesh this out a little bit more with you, and from there we can decide if it makes sense to have a deeper conversation. Does Monday early afternoon work for a 45-minute video call, maybe 2 p.m.?